We also have different cultural mindsets in different countries. So, culture is a collection of our norms, our history, how we've grown up. We even know if you grew up in the United States, not only is there different culture between the United States and other countries, but there's different culture in different states. So, the different kind of the four cultural mindsets that we talk about in this chapter are individual versus collectivism. So individualism is what the United States kind of culture that United States has. Well, Asian countries are more common for collectivism. So this is the interdependence that a society maintains among individuals. This also looks at how the family structure works and how just the community structure works when we look at individualism versus collectivism. Other cultural things are whether we have uncertainty avoidance, we might feel uncomfortable or threatened by unknown or uncertain situations, or we might not have a problem with uncertainty and we don't mind taking risks. So the example from the book talks about how South American countries score high on uncertainty avoidance, that they prefer to work within things that they already know. So they're less likely to take risks within business. Short-term versus long-term orientation. So short-term focus on the past and the present, we ignore the future, we're looking at actual stability. And with long-term orientation, we're looking at long into the future. Within business, we're going to want to be frugal so that we can maintain our business profits for as long as we can. We also have large versus small power distance. So large power distant cultures accept unequally distributed power within and across institutions and organizations. And so the idea that everyone is created equal and should have an equal voice is more highly valued in small power distance societies. So when we might look at a large power distant culture, this might be more of a planned economy where the government controls everything and individuals have less ability for private ownership or owning their own companies and organizations. That would be an example of a large power distance company. So this shows the high, medium, or low for these different things. So the United States is high in individualism and medium in uncertainty avoidance, but low in long-term orientation. And we have a medium high power distance versus the low power distance. Another thing that we have to think about when we're operating in other areas is the kind of technology and infrastructure available to us. What kind of communication equipment is available? Do we have reliable or unreliable utilities? What are the transportation systems like? Do we have access to roads, to railroad systems, to busing, to how far are we from an airport? All of those things can be taken into consideration. Does a lack of technology, a lack of internet give us issues transmitting information? So how do we even get information across? We might not have access to certain kinds of equipment unless maybe we brought all of that equipment with us, but then we don't have access easily to parts and replacement things. We also have differences in internal accounting systems. As I talked about at the beginning of the chapter, every country has its own accounting laws. So in the US, we have US GAAP. Every country has its own GAAP. And additionally, in addition to GAAP, We also have IFRS, which looks at global standards for multinational organizations. So these are all different things that we have to think about when we're operating in multiple countries or when we're looking at moving our business into another country or another area that we want to think what things are available to us, where are we going to have to go for access to those things that our business needs. So when we talk about IFRS and individual countries' accounting methods and principles, the IASB and IFRS has been trying to create a standardized system that works across all countries. Now, this is something that has been worked on for a very, very long time, and it's called convergence. So it's a convergence and acceptance of global accounting standards. This is an example of countries that have or haven't adopted current IFRS global standards. As you see, the United States has no explicit plans to converge. So there are some things where US GAAP and IFRS agree on, but there are several things that US GAAP and IFRS cannot agree on and have not been able to come to an agreement on. So the United States and IFRS have been working on this convergence for over 20 years, and they're not really any closer 20 years later than they were when they started. One of those things of convergence is in inventory costing, where IFRS does not allow for LIFO costing and US GAAP does. That's one of the areas where they don't agree. And so if you are doing international accounting or you have a global company, you have to understand how the different rules in different countries are affecting your financial reporting statements. Other different, here I have LIFO allowed. LIFO is only allowed in the United States. Then we have in the United Kingdom, fixed asset revaluation is allowed, but it's not allowed anywhere else. So those are just some examples of the things that we haven't been able to come to agreement about. As you can also see, the United States and the United Kingdom are more active in auditing of accounting records than some of the other countries are. We also have to talk about currency exchange rates when we talk about global business. So the exchange rate is the price of doing business in another currency. And exchange rates fluctuate daily based on supply and demand for particular currencies. So in this slide here, you'll see that we have different currencies and different amounts of what those might be. So in Britain, their currency is a pound, and in Europe, a lot of Europe has come together and agreed to use a standard currency, which is a euro. This has helped to facilitate trade and travel in European countries because they don't have to convert currencies every time they move from one country to another. If everyone's on the euro, anyone who's on the euro doesn't have to worry about that currency translation. We have the Japanese yen, in Mexico the pesos, and in India the rupee. And we have what the current exchange rate is in dollars or per dollar, what we would buy for one. As we said, this rate changes daily. So you would just need to check on the internet. You could say, what is the current exchange rate for a dollar to a pound? So in this example, we have a US company that owes a Japanese company 1 million yen. So how many dollars do we need to pay off 1 million yen? Well, at the date of this currency exchange, the equivalent number of US dollars to 1 million yen was $8,843. In this example, a Japanese company agrees to pay a US company $10,000. So how much yen do they need to pay the US company? So they need to pay the US company $10,000. They need to convert their yen into US dollars. So they need 1,130,837 yen. We have different talk about with the exchange rates, whether the exchange rate is rising or falling against another. So this is usually called the dollar is strong or the dollar is weak. So in this, here we talk about the exchange rate for Japan, whether we would say the exchange rate, a dollar, is equivalent to 113.08 yen. We would say that the exchange rate. Then if we would say, is it rising or falling? So assume that the exchange rate for yen rises to 0.0109. In the US, we would say that the exchange rate for yen has risen. In Japan, they would say the exchange rate for the dollar has fallen. We might say the yen has risen against the dollar or the dollar has fallen against the yen, if you've heard this kind of terminology in exchange rates before.